Welcome to the December 16, 2025 Flathead Reservation Water Management Board meeting.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hear me?
Is that Ken?
Yeah.
Yeah, we see you too. All right, welcome. With that, I guess Clayton called in sick today, so I guess I will be chairing the meeting. With that, I guess we can get going. The first item on the agenda is to adopt an agenda. Does anybody have any revisions, modifications, updates, or are we good? If there's no modifications, I accept then motion to approve the agenda as is.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move that we adopt the December 16, 2025 board agenda.
I have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the December 16, 2025 agenda as provided. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, with that, George, would you lead us in an opening prayer?
Sure.
Thank you.
Dear Lord Jesus, to you. Thank you for this day, allowing us all to be here for another day. Help us to share each other's thoughts on our tasks at hand, to work together and come up with good solutions. Protect us all, guide us. May we all return home safely. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, George.
You're welcome.
All right, as always, the meeting minutes from the previous board meetings are posted on the board's website. And that's referenced on the agenda. Okay, Sydney, could you please take attendance?
Yeah, Roger Noble,
Here.
George McClung,
Here.
Kevin Cook,
Here.
Georgia Sneeze,
Here.
and Clayton Matt is absent.
Thank you. All right.
So Sydney, you rolled your eyes. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, with that, does anyone have any potential conflicts of interest? What's on the agenda today? Georgia?
No.
George?
No.
Ken?
Nope.
Roger, myself? No. All right, we would need to review the board minutes from November 18 and see if we need any modifications there or not. Hey, I guess the only thing I see on this is that under number 9 on the minutes, that the next board meeting, I think we were tentatively scheduled to, there's a question mark. We had been tentatively scheduled to meet on the 11th, was it? And that got rescheduled to today. So probably the original meeting date was the 11th with the rescheduling.
So I move that we accept the meeting minutes from November 18th with the notation you observed.
And I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the November 18, 2025 board minutes as modified. All those in favor say aye. 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 Thank you. Okay, public comment. We do have some public in the comment. I don't know if there's people online also. But at this time, we accept public comment for anything that's not on the agenda.
If anyone online has a public comment, please raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. Seeing no public comment online.
No public comment in the audience. So we are good there. All right, the next item on our agenda is the budget. I think the first item is the status of the 2026 budget. Really, I think that's been developed. It was forwarded and approved at a previous meeting. Ethan, did you want to? It was actually submitted to the funding entities on November 26th, 2025. Ethan, do you want to add anything to that?
I don't have anything to add, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Okay. All right, so that's the status of the budget there. We are in the process of developing a budget for submission for the biennium fiscal year 2027-2028. That's still in progress. I think we'll hear more. Well, yeah, so I guess there really is not an action item then on that one because it's already occurred, with the exception that we're still working on the fiscal year 2027 budget. So with that, I guess we come to legislative biennium report by Payla Hoyt with the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation. Welcome, Payla.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the invitation today. And just, so you know, I do need to leave a little bit early to get back in time for a kid concert. Because it's that time of year.
Fun.
Yeah. So Taylor White, Program Manager with the Compact Implementation Program for the state. And I've got a building update and legislative biennium update. First though, just before I forget, I wanted to pass on a recommendation from the Lieutenant Governor. Her recommendation is that when you select the next fifth member, after Georgia, she recommends having the term for that fifth member expire at the end of the calendar year, instead of expire on the date that that person is appointed, 4 years from that date. The state has found that when you have kind of the same expiration date for those positions, it's just easier for folks to track in the long run. So I just wanted to pass on that recommendation from the Lieutenant Governor. But then I'm actually gonna do building first, because that's what makes most sense in my brain. But I will cover both. So with the building update, I understand that this space isn't meeting the board's needs now as currently configured. I know there's some accessibility issues, and I know it's tough to have the main public meeting space also being this place where people have offices. So, and that you guys have been looking for other options, and haven't found a better alternative, like so many rural areas in the state, there's just not a lot of inventory. And since you haven't found anything better, the board has instead proposed construction of a new building with funding coming from the state and CSBT. We have a design that would meet your needs. And so I discussed the proposal for a new building with DNRC leadership and with the Lieutenant Governor. The Lieutenant Governor, she understands that it's important to have an adequate space, and she wants you all to have an adequate space because you're doing important work. However, this would be a really challenging time to secure additional funds for a state, to secure additional state funds for a new building. And what the DNRC director pointed out is just that there's just not going to be a lot of opportunity in the upcoming session for capital improvements. I think generally it's always challenging for the legislature to authorize funds for a new building of any type. and that this next session will be particularly tough, just because of funding, limits on funding needs, but what the lieutenant governor also pointed out, which I hadn't quite appreciated, is that there's the challenging ownership issues of like, who would own the building, and that's gonna make it even harder to kind of be successful in a request, so, because it likely wouldn't be a state-owned building, and then if the funding was going, if it was state money going toward a building that wasn't owned by the state, and then we don't know if the Reservation Water Management Board even can own a building or not. And so because there would be those questions about ownership, she thinks that that would make it even more challenging. So her recommendation is to instead turn your focus away from a new building, just recognizing that it's just not realistic for the state to be able to successfully get money for a building. And to focus instead on finding either a better place to lease. I know you guys have tried, but if there are other options, or exploring options for renovating this space to make it work better, or finding a different place and renovating that space, that she thinks that would be a more realistic thing to focus on. And so I think knowing that new funds for new building aren't coming, I think the questions are like, how to make this space work, or how to make comparable space work. Oh, sorry, Ken, I'm not looking at you there either. You're really tiny on the screen. And what are the most important things, just knowing that, there's not going to be funding for everything. What are the most important things for the office? What's the most economical approach to meeting those needs? And I'd be happy to sit down with the board or the office staff or a combo of the two and do some problem solving around this. It'd be great if Melissa could join us as well. So that was the building report that I wanted to share.
Maybe we
and I
could
can,
see does the board have any questions relative to the building situation? I guess so it seems like they haven't really answered the question of if the board can own a building or not. Is that still up in the air? It sounds like.
yes, and I know we haven't dived deep on trying to figure out if that is possible or not. But our initial take and Melissa's is that we don't think it would be possible, but maybe it would be.
Okay. Well, if you could look into that further, I think that would be appreciated. At some point, still gonna need a more viable building.
Mhm.
Well, it just occurs to me that our identity is and will continue to be a little fuzzy, right? As an instrumentality, we've encountered this difficulty of what are you? And it has affected everything from insurance coverage to what kind of web address we can use. But so far we have found ways to navigate that. And I think this is just another avenue that we have to explore because this office anticipates being here in perpetuity. And so at some point, there has to be some resolution on ownership. And I recognize that's not an easy question to answer, but there has to be an answer besides not possible,
I think what we're suggesting now is to plan on continuing to lease as the next step.
Sure.
Just knowing that it's this next session is not going to be a successful time to get additional funding.
No, that's good. I
So that would get
understand.
us all the way to July of 2029.
It just seems like a lot of what we've had to grapple with on this board is we're an odd little duck and we have to kind of figure these things out as we go, don't we? And this looks like yet another one that's unclear, but hopefully that can get defined. And I recognize it's not easy.
And I guess I don't see that this board has to own a building.
No, we probably don't have to own a building, but I guess we need the situation is just, that there's not much available for lease either, so it's like, what are our options then? Our next option is ownership, so. I guess so I think it's important that we resolve that to know if we can even own a building. And maybe we need to start exploring other funding mechanisms, you know?
We did discuss, that if it was tribal owned, that it could be put in trust and save on taxes.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Doesn't seem like the compact really thought that through when they developed the compact, yeah, so.
I
What's
think
it-
there's lots of things that, were yet to be figured out.
Yeah.
with This and other compacts.
What's the title on the truck say?
It's the Flathead Reservation Water Management Board.
I know a truck's different when real property, but
It's actually recorded as an asset too.
its own, just build that out there.
No, it's good,
That's,
That's a really good point.
it's a significant, asset is Montana's trucks.
It's true.
But,
I don't know if that ownership question getting resolved would make it possible to get funding in the next legislative session.
well, not
Based
even
on what
that,
I heard from.
but do we need to be
election.
positioning ourselves for the 2029 biennium, you know, so. Which would give us a lot more time to do so, but, and I guess one thing that's kind of been on the back of my mind is, you know, maybe we have to look at alternative funding sources, like getting a loan or something like that, you know, using water right application fees as part of our down payment or something. I don't, you know, maybe we need to get more creative here.
additional grant programs perhaps, maybe needed, maybe that's an opportunity.
Yeah. All right, well, I guess that's food for next year. All right,
But like I said, I'd be happy to sit down, I think it'd be helpful to have Melissa talk through like, what would it take to, make this space work better? Or if there is another space that could be leased that doesn't quite work, but maybe could be, made workable with less of an investment. And talk through like, what are the most important things for the office to have.
yeah, I think we'd definitely like to have that conversation.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
And then on to budget and the houses legislative biennium, update. Okay, so for the current fiscal year that we're in, then just to keep things extra confusing for all of us, at least for my brain, is the state fiscal year runs differently than the board's fiscal year, and the tribe's fiscal year. So ours is, July 1st to June 30th. So, for the fiscal year that we are in now and that runs until the end of June 2026, there's 570,500. That's the same amount that we provided to them last year. And so that will be the same this year. And it will be the same amount that will be provided the following year too. So, the amount that we were able to provide this last year is the same amount we'll be able to provide annually, until July 2027, and state doesn't have additional funds that it can provide during this time. And one thing that I noticed about the budget materials that were provided is that the budget exceeds the amount of funds that the state and the tribe are providing. And so just recognizing that there is not more money the state can provide until if there were to be any change, the earliest a change could happen would be July 2027. Recognizing that, my recommendation is to revise the budget so that it is in line with appropriations. I'm guessing that maybe the reason why it is it's not aligned with appropriations, is that it's part of making the case for why more money is needed. But for the state, we will, if we're going to make the case for more funds being needed, we'll need to make the case separately from budget. And the way that the process works is so, the amount that the state is currently providing for the board, that 570,500, it's in DNRC's base budget. And so, it is in there, and it would be in there every year, until or unless there was a change requested to that. And so if the board and DNRC were to request additional funds for the board, that would be identified as a specific decision point for the legislature, and it would be called out in DNRC's base budget for the legislature to consider that increase specifically. And we would need to make a strong case and a really specific case for why additional funds are needed. You know, we could mention that state staff received a raise in the last session, like that would be one piece of what we could put together. Another thing we could talk about would be the number of applications that like are being received or are expected to be received, or specific on upcoming work that is expected. So for example, DNRC, it was 2 sessions ago, made significant changes to the permit and change process and really shortened a lot of the timelines. And we were able to make the case that we needed more staff in order to be able to meet those shorter timelines. So like that's the kind of case that we would need to make in order to get increased funding. I would just say generally the legislature is hesitant to increase spending of taxpayer dollars. And so our case would just need to be really strong and convincing and really focused on how it's going to benefit the public. We would need to be ready to have answers to all kinds of tough questions. How that process works. And that process would start now. It happens through the EPP process, the executive planning process. And so the first stage of that is internal vetting within DNRC. It's very competitive. You know, DNRC is a large entity, and there's lots of other parts of DNRC far beyond water that may be interested in additional funding. So we would need to be competitive and successful within DNRC. The next step, if it is successful, if the request for additional funds is successful in DNRC, then it goes through a vetting process with the other agencies at the state, you know, where you're probably arguing against like MDT and FWP and probably their services. And then it would also need to go into the governor's budget. And that's kind of the process that it would need to follow in order to become a decision point in the 2027 legislative session. And so this would be, you know, a proposal for increased funding would be something we need to work on together. Just because we know the types of questions that we're going to get and how we need to make that case. And we've had some initial discussions with our fiscal staff to understand what the types of things they need to see. So if this is something that the board is interested in, I would imagine you would be, since just because of how your budget looks, then I think that we should sit down and start kind of working through some of those specifics so that we can put together a good case. And that would definitely be a high priority thing to do as soon as possible. I think right away after the first of the year, planning to make some serious work on it would be important, so that we could be competitive within the DNRC vetting process.
All right, well, thank you. I guess, yeah, the budget committee does have I guess we have a Teams meeting coming up on Thursday at 1 o'clock. But that focus is going to be on the existing budget. Is that?
That was my understanding.
Okay, just kind of clarify.
But we could talk more future looking as well.
Yeah, all right, great. Okay, well, that gives us an idea of the basics here, so. we need to develop a meeting plan, I guess.
Yeah,
Any questions for Payla?
No, that was all very good. Thank you.
Okay, well, appreciate the information, Payla.
yeah, yep, I look forward to talking with y'all tomorrow, and then great to get on in January and.
Day after, it's day after tomorrow, isn't it?
Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday, yes. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks you guys.
Okay, we're on to item number 4. Permit and change WP&P workgroup updates, and the permit and change work group has been meeting. I think we've had 3 meetings now. And the idea was just to give the board a little presentation and a status update on what's been happening. So with that, I'll let Ethan elaborate a little bit more on that.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. We've actually met 5 times now, which it adds up quickly. Sneaks up on me, right? Did I get my count right? 5. So most recently, the focus of the group has been to better explore known issues relating to legal water availability within the area in which we administer water rights. And so at the first group of sessions, there was 3 meetings. It was identified by the work group, which is a group that has Office of the Engineer staff, 2 board members, 2 members from the Confederated Salish and Treaty Tribes, and then 2 members from the state that all work as a technical group trying to facilitate drafting of water policies and procedures that ultimately the board will have in front of it to determine whether or not they want to adopt something. And with the target, of course, being setting forward the procedures needed for new permitting and changing use of existing water rights. So the new permitting is very, very dependent on whether or not water is legally available, and the result of a new permit application will be dramatically influenced on the determination of whether water is determined to be legally available. Just for edification for other folks, legally available is something in addition to a construct of physical availability. And in certain cases, you might be able to look out at a river flowing in front of you and see that there's water there. That would be water that is physically available. However, if that water is spoken for downstream by an existing, which means senior water use, and that water may not be legally available, and the amount of those downstream water legal demands is relevant in relation to the physical availability. In other words, to determine legal availability, generally the approach statewide historically taken by the Montana DNRC and other locations for water rights administration has been to look at that total physical availability and then subtract from that downstream legal demands. With that, we embarked on a fairly technical cursory look at many locations on the Flathead Indian Reservation, identifying stream gauges and where we could assess large drainages and then putting together the relevant information of what the stream gauge shows as physically available there, along with what the obligations are for legal water availability. And with that, the hydrologist, the board's hydrologist, Dustin Walters, did a significant amount of work looking to build hydrographs at a lot of these key locations. So there was a coordinated mapping geographic information system exercise, along with a data analysis of stream flow information and water right information. That said, what I'd like to do is hand things over to Dustin to give us a more detailed look at certain locations on the Flathead Indian Reservation that were were considered so that you can kind of walk along with us and the path that we took to look at this issue of physical and visual availability. Dustin?
Thanks, Ethan. Sydney, could you pull up that document that I had you bring up in the background? Yeah, and I was just gonna go over, basically, I'm gonna go over just, what is essentially the publicly available data, which is, in-stream flows that the tribe has and where they occur at existing, stream gauge locations. And so I've looked at those and tried to, and just compared for the period of record that we have for each of these stream gauges, what the in-stream flow looks like compared to that. So if you just want to, yeah, scroll that down and make the graph available there. And so what you see on that first chart, this is the Jocko River, and your dotted line is the in-stream flow water right. I also distinguish whether they were a FIP in-stream flow or other in-stream flow from the appendix 11 or 12 of the compact. But at any rate, what this graph has, it has a 10th percentile line, a 50th percentile line, a 90th percentile line, and it has the in-stream flow on it. Now, the 50th percentile flows are kind of the benchmark that the DNRC uses as a model flow to determine legal and physical availability. So what you see in the first example here is that for the, that staff gauge, what is that, 33 years of record, the in-stream flow that the tribe has there at the Jocko River is actually higher than the 50th percentile and over the 90th percentile for fairly large portions of the year. And so this just kind of sets the stage for the big question of whether there is any water physically, legally available if the in-stream flow is higher than that 50th percentile, then it's highly unlikely that there is any available. And so we went through and looked at different gauging stations with in-stream flows, and the Jocko River was the first one. So if you scroll down, Sydney, you'll see also looked at Mission Creek at, I'm gonna mispronounce it, but it's Moise.
Yeah.
And you see there's a little bit more, the in-stream flow is down at that 10th percentile in the spring and winter, but it does bump up over the 50th percentile for most of the year. And over the 90th percentile for sections. So again, that tells us that it's unlikely there's gonna be any water available. In that creek also. And if we go down to the next one, Sydney. But yeah, if you guys have questions, interrupt me.
So I was just thinking maybe you could step up to that and just point out these different percentiles and show where which is the gauge stuff, which is
Sure.
where there's water available, where there isn't water available, because these graphs are really complicated.
Yeah, and I mean, I glossed over that in the beginning, but yeah, I can just slow down.
Well, why don't you just jump up there and see if you can walk us through this so that we know what we're looking at. Well, it's, for the lay person, this is gonna go right over their head.
No, you're good.
It wouldn't go over my head.
Just go over your head, Ken, I'm sorry. So basically, Crow, well, I'll go back and look at, we'll just start from the top, Jocko. So the bottom line is the 10th percentile flows for the 33 years that we have data. The next line up here, the kind of greenish white, that's 50th percentile. And then the blue line on top is the 90th percentile flow. And then
So-
your dash.
Question? What do you mean by percentile flow?
That means, so the 50th percentile is like your median. So that means that half of the flows in that 33 year period for that specific day, because this is graph for 365 days of the year. That means half the flows are above and below that 50th percentile. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah.
So the same thing with your 90th percentile, that means 90% of your flows are below that 90th percentile and 10% are above.
And what's the dashed line on there?
And the dashed line is in-stream flow. And the reason that it looks boxy is because the in-stream flow is a flow that's given on a monthly basis, not a daily basis.
Important point on that is, the RDAs actually really don't go into effect until sometime at the end of this year or next year. And the majority of that data is without RDAs, where they just had a set in-stream flow through that period. Like Jocko River would be 140, 180 at the mile, something like that, and each one of them had their own set amount for the majority of that data that you're looking at. I don't know if that helps anybody.
I'm gonna offer some percentile assistance also. If you're looking at a really wet year, like a flood year, where you're like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this much water in the river before. That's that blue 90th percentile flow line. That's kind of like where you see that. Whereas, you know, some other years where you're like, oh my gosh, it is so dry out here. I can walk across the river places I would normally get swept away. That is gonna be that lower black line, the 10th percentile. Now, most of the time, you get the green line, which is your average and your median. And I hope that helps, so it didn't interrupt your flow.
Yeah, no, and then one of the key takeaways is that 50th percentile line that you see there, that is the benchmark that the DNRC uses to determine the legal and physical availability. They look at the median of monthly means, which is, the median is a 50th percentile flow. So when you look at this first chart, what that tells you is that already that the legal demand on the water in the stream is higher than the 50th percentile flow. So there's already a higher legal demand there than what exists in the system, essentially.
And that's because the green line is below the dash line all the time?
Most of the time, yes. So roughly, if you look at the spring from January to April, it's right at the 50th percentile. The dash line is, the in-stream flow is. And then, you know, from April to August, it's above the 50th percentile, and there's periods there where it's above the 90th percentile. And then we go above the 50th percentile all the way till November. So there's just the 1 month out of the year, December, where there potentially would be some legally available water in the Jocko River.
Just I have a question.
Yeah.
This is helpful. Looking ahead, you know, the story's fairly straightforward, isn't it? The demand is greater than what's in the system. Looking at the last 30 years, has anyone had an opportunity to kind of model future years based on uncertainty with climate data and rainfall and that type of concern?
I mean, your black line would be, you know, that's the dry years. So we know
Okay.
when we look at it, we, you know, if we think that years are gonna get drier, we know what that looks like. That looks, you know, and everything would just sort of shift down a little bit. But for, you know, for our main purposes on this, not that that's not important business on the projection and the forward going look at things. But the reason that we use the median, you know, values is to, you don't want to issue a water right where it's not there, where there's no water legally available at least half the time. So, you could propose that if it was gonna see a trending towards drier, years in the future, that's gonna be that dotted line, which represents a water right, with monthly flow rates. So The reason that it's blocky like that, and I know you know some of this, but just in case somebody else doesn't, is because the water right that is the primary legal demand for this particular location is in monthly values. And so, as any of those, that green line, if it was to go up because somehow we got on a wet trend in the future, which isn't what most predictions look like, hey, maybe we might see some change to that legal availability. However, most of the predictive, long-term forecasts seem to be a little more towards the downside. And then also, an earlier runoff period is something that, we see. Now, in the case of this, hydrograph, it is an amalgamation of all the flow periods. So when you look at the jaggedy lines, that is if we took every day on the 1st of May and mushed them all together, okay? But the reality is that if you looked at each year's flow, you'd see a very different flow story for each and every year. It'd be almost too chaotic for you to look at. The one thing that we have noticed on a lot of systems, especially systems on the western side of the state, is that the runoff is moving to the left, meaning that, it's getting earlier in the year and oftentimes a little bit slower. So that's probably some of the concerns that we look at the most in terms of the predictive aspect. That said, though, on the immediacy of this story is well, what do you do now? If somebody upstream of this location, which includes a lot of that Moe's area, wants to get a new water right, and that'll be something that we'll talk about a little bit after we give Justin a better chance to show his hard work at the other locations.
Sure, so I'll just, I guess I'll just go and just look at each of these, and kind of do the same rundown of the percentile of the history flow. And this is the Mission Creek at Moe's. And the story here, you see the in-stream flow, again, the dotted line, the 10th percentile is the bottom black line, and the 50th and 90th percentile. So you see here, the in-stream flow is actually lower than the 50th percentile for a good chunk of the year until May. And then it bumps up and, gets up above the 90th in some spots, and that's clear until the end of November. And then it somewhat matches the 50th percentile in December. So you have, a similar story. There's 5 months of the year where there might be some legally available water in this creek. Might be, we'd still need to really dig into the details around other demands.
And so, if you don't mind, I know you enjoy talking with us a little bit here, but this might be an example where if somebody needed a year-round, water right, that there could be a portion of the year where, look, there might be some water legally available. Right, now Justin, sorry to load you up with this question here, but if we were gonna look at, does this graph include all of the legal demands at this point?
No, and that's the thing, this is not, so if you were to go in and start, this is just the in-stream flow. So if you were to go in and start saying, what are the demands in terms of irrigation, in terms of all the other surface water demands from domestic, commercial, whatever, then this would look a lot different. So this is strictly the in-stream flow to kind of paint a picture of what is out there, what we're looking for a situation.
At that cursory level, and we are planning to follow up, I think, with these analyses and add in the irrigation, which will be a significant piece. The RDAs that George was talking about, which is a river diversion allowance, is going to be a significant legal demand in the area. And I know that having worked here for a few years, I'm constantly reminded by irrigators that don't have enough water that they need to be remembered. So just throwing that out there.
And just looking at Crow Creek. This is right below the reservoir. And so, similar story here. There's really just a small portion of time here, there may be a 1 month out of the year where the demand from the in-stream flow is, less than the 50th percentile. So there may be a little bit of water available, but not for the rest of the year for the most part. And so the approach we took, so we looked at all the places, again, there were in-stream flows and there were engagement sites. And I think at the end of the day, we decided that it was good to break this into kind of 3 different buckets. There's all the tributaries to the Flathead River. There's the Flathead River itself, and then there's Flathead Lake. And that's kind of how we're going to end up approaching it. And then just kind of just saying that ahead of the next hydrograph, because we also looked at these. This is right below the SKQ dam. And so this gives you an idea, well, there's no water really available in the tributaries, but then when you look at the main stem of the Flathead River, what you see here is that in-stream flow is right at or below, maybe a little bit above here in May, but really kind of around the 10th percentile. And again, that's not taking any other legal demands into account, but that does tell you it's likely, yes, there is water available in the Flathead River. So what does that mean for the tributaries and for the lake? Those are the things we're kind of working on parsing out right now. And then we looked at the Little Bitterroot. Again, there's an in-stream flow there and a gauge. And this is a really interesting hydrograph that you can kind of geek out on, because you see these, I'm sure these are rain on snow events that really kind of throw that 90th percentile off. There's some pretty extreme events that have happened here in the Little Bitterroot, which is kind of neat, but it's not really as germane to the legal and physical.
And this is the in-stream flow site,
Yes,
which is up in Mill Creek below the Kamasai Canal.
this is right at the mouth.
There's not an in-stream flow there.
Oh, yeah, there's,
In-stream flow is up in Nirada.
well, it's mapped there.
No,
I would trust
not as an
George.
in-stream flow.
He's been doing this his whole career.
Yeah.
All right, well, that would have been good to know during our last meetings.
And it's 6 CFS, so.
Yeah.
As we were looking at these, George, I was thinking, you could probably look at a hydrograph that's unlabeled and know which stream it's representing, because you've worked with these for so long, huh?
By the design of them,
Yeah.
how they move their water. Little Bitterroot at the mouth gets hammered. Irrigation quits at Christensen's Ranch, pretty close to Hot Springs. And then what's left is Malinak and them can use it all up. There's no restrictions against using it all. So we see it just about go dry in the summertime, and you see your higher flows in January, February. Pretty interesting.
Well, that's something we'll have to clean up when we finally put a group together to really look at a more technical in-depth analysis of this. Then you also have the Flathead River at Perma has an in-stream flow and a gauge there. And what I put together here was just kind of give you an idea. And this is definitely where it gets a little messy, because this is what Ethan was saying earlier. If you look at a single year's data, this is what it looks like. So these are, you got the dotted line again is the in-stream flow. And then I have the same green-white line as your 50th percentile. Just threw that in there, but then I grabbed the last 3 years data, just so those are kind of the closest in our memory, right? So we, think about how dry or wet it was the last 3 years. And so we have the dark green line is 23, and the orange line is 24, and then the dotted line is this year. And I think just kind of what this illustrates is that, yes, with the 50th percentile, which is in the light green, like I said, it appears as though there's a lot of legally available water there. because the in-stream flow is below it, but when you look at these yearly graphs, we actually bumped below that in-stream flow multiple times, this past year in the middle of the summer. And even at some points in 24 and 25. So just like to look at the most recent variability. I don't know if you had anything else on that, Ethan.
I'm wondering, George, you're thinking about the fifth in-stream flow on a little bit of route as
Mhm.
opposed to the other in-stream flow on the little bit of route.
Yeah, the only in-stream flow is below Camasay Canal. There's no in-stream flow at the mouth. And we've got real good records of showing it being dry most of the time during the summer.
Yeah, it's a water quality site, it's usually dry.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can just wade right across.
It makes it hard to sample.
Except it's kind of gross.
Yeah.
It's been mistreated.
And then I also just looked at, so this is, again, it's similar to above. We have the in-stream flow, and this is at Flathead Perma again. 10th percentile, 50th and 90th percentile for that site. And this is where, again, the story in the main stem Flathead is that, there appears still to be legal water available. So, this was just a cursory look to decide if we need to take a deeper dive into this, and the committee, decided, yes, indeed, we do need to, and we're gonna carry it forward with me and the two tribal and DNRC members of the committee, and we're gonna, basically, the option, if we go forward and don't acknowledge that there's not any legal available water, and a permittee wants to come in and apply for a water right for a permit, then they would need to go through this whole process to determine that on their own. So we just want some background documentation and a good technical report on hand to be able to inform them that you can apply for this permit, but we're gonna have to have some other options for you in terms of offsets or whatnot, or buying other water rights, because, there isn't any legally available. And so that's the next step that we're gonna do, is do a deeper dive across the whole reservation. And like I said, we also acknowledging that there is water available in the Flathead River, there likely is. So we were gonna treat these as 3 different buckets or different pools of water, which would be the tributaries, the Flathead main stem, and the lake. So we're in the early phases of, as a subgroup, getting together and working on this.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
Well, I really applaud you and the team and the work that has gone into this, because this gives the level of resolution. I know you're gonna add more to it, but this is such a service to the people who live here and rely on these water resources for, doing their life and their business. So this is important work. Thank you for doing it.
So I'm just, sorry to keep bringing it up. There is a water right for the little bit of route of the mouth. It is in the other in-stream flow category, and it maps out down to the mouth.
Okay, for enforcement rights, in-stream flow is up above.
It's 76L 300-52852. And it has monthly flow rates assigned to it. And the way that the other in-stream flows work is that there's a large flow amount allocated on a monthly time step period. And then they have an enforcement schedule process that's built into the water right compact. So you guys haven't probably spent much time with them like you have with.
No, we don't do any
Immediacy
enforcement
of the irrigation project water rights. But for our purposes, we really need to include it as a legal demand.
Yeah, so during the summer this year was probably under 0.01 most of the summer at the mouth. Just for an example.
Yes.
And just another thing was really we did look at briefly was also the appendix 16 has all the wetlands that are wetland water rights that are part of the compact, and that's this 10,000 acres that are all the yellow polygons on the map here. And those are important because, it's more of a localized impact, but any type of future application would need to take these rights into account also, and not draw them down, so.
Yes, I think you've done a really good job on showing this, so I agree with George's assessment of your work here, and for us, now we kind of try to think about, well, what does this mean, in terms of our forward moving progress, and typically, in an area, off the reservation where you would go for a new permit where there was water that was determined not to be legally available, I know that's a double negative, so I apologize in advance, but usually in that circumstance, somebody would look to, if they were wanting to have a new water use, they would have to mitigate this thing called net depletions. So, say you wanted a new, subdivision water right that has monthly demand for every month of the year. That would mean that you would need to come up with some other water source and change that water source in a way that would mitigate the net depletions. And that project is like the big challenge for the technical work group and for the board ultimately is to figure out what makes sense, for the Flathead Indian Reservation and in terms of forward-going uses. How would the change process need to work for the board in order to achieve the compact? How would new permits need to work? And so the work group has been exploring other options that are a little outside of some of the more traditional, full mitigation of net depletions and looking towards work that has been done elsewhere in the state to see if there's some opportunities for improvement to identify perhaps certain uses that maybe warrant, some types of waiver from more traditional looks at how net depletions and adverse effects and other water right criteria will be applied. And so, with that said, I'll just shut up and say more to come.
Yeah.
But we are trying to navigate what is now identified as like, a sideboard that we see in terms of new permitting and in terms of change authorizations.
Any other questions from the board? Yes, I should have prefaced this thing in the beginning because, what we're working on now is the really complicated aspect of the water right process. Before we look, we've got our domestic allowances permits, we've got our stock water permits, and we've got our domestic development allowance permits. So those are all for groundwater wells that are less than 35 gallons a minute. This stuff is for groundwater wells and surface water that will exceed 35 gallons a minute. And in addition to that, this vote is probably more focused and changes that will occur, but change of a water right, change of a point of diversion, change of a place of use type thing. So this is a lot bigger endeavor than our previous ones and our previous permitting, and we had to get that up and off the ground, which is really going well. But this is where the complex situation goes. And one of the first things is to look at legal availability. Is there even water out there for permitting? So yeah, the first cut on this showed that it's questionable. So now we need to take it to the next level of a more robust analysis to make it a legally defensible document that we can produce as far as what's available and what's not available.
I have a question and I'll preface it with that. This may get us too far in the weeds, and if it is, I retract my question. But looking at the map that you had up there with the wetland complex and knowing that those wetlands are specially protected. The groundwater here and surface water, especially in those wetland areas, is incredibly interconnected. How do you, or is that part of the process when you're looking at these, is how to retain it? And that's not easy, is it? That's gotta be tough. Because they're dynamic, that's just how they are.
Don't want to be a spoiler on things, but one of the first things that we did have proposed in the WP&Ps under this section is a clarification of the connectivity between surface and groundwater, because your observation is pretty astute. Outside of these reservation boundaries, when I used to work, in water rights, there was a distinct separation between groundwater and surface water in terms of how, and they still have some separation in terms of some of the assessments and the availabilities. Our present approach within the workgroup, I'll take a risk and speak a little bit on behalf of the group, but it seems to be to embrace a more combined approach for surface and groundwater, and recognizing that linkage as an inextricable, connectivity. And so if somebody's going to get a groundwater permit or a surface water permit, they would need to face the same type of legal demands gauntlet and the same types of mitigation requirements, because that taking out of either one for the by and large for the reservation will be the same because of that connection. There's a timing issue that we will need to work on, but for the most part, I think that I sort of expected that's what will get proposed by the work group. I've been wrong before though.
Well, it bleeds into upland game, waterfowl, big mammal management here, and it's all tied up to Aboriginal rights that the tribes have for fishing and hunting. And another layer that maybe you guys haven't encountered on this yet, and I can feed you some citations on it, but there is really compelling meta-analysis research globally that is showing that wetlands that are greater than 300 years in age are amazing carbon sinks. They can strip megatons of legacy carbon out of the atmosphere and do so. And we have this unusual situation on this reservation where we do have wetlands that we know are greater than that in age because they're above the irrigation canal. And you can assess that carbon sink that they have become. And in terms of climate mitigation and an uncertain climate future, these old wetlands that are still extant here are serving incredibly powerful functions in preserving, all kinds of things, not just in-stream flows, but habitat, and I know that's not the purpose of this office and the ordinance, but just to stress how important those systems are.
Well, and I believe the ordinance, correct me if I'm wrong, there's language in the ordinance that directly links groundwater and surface water. The way this state does it, you would have to show that they're connected in certain areas. But here, that's not something we'll have to show because it's in the ordinance. We're accepting it. They're both the same.
That's awesome. Again, this is really important work.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll move on to item number 5, water policy and procedures. Ethan, looks like you're up for this one.
All right, Mr. Vice Chairman, board members. Let's see, we have a couple items under the water policy and procedures. Item 1 is a carryover from the last agenda that you saw, where I had WP&Ps and I had hoped to give you a report that we had gotten through all of your hard work and made a consolidated and updated version of all of the water policies and procedures and gotten that posted. And we ran into a few hiccups during that workload process last go around. Those have been resolved, and and thanks, to, my partner in crime on these WP&Ps, Sydney. Sydney done some really excellent work helping me, track down, the correct language for all sections that the board has contemplated, sent out to public notice and adopted. And so we have a new, variant of the WP&Ps that is posted to the website right now. That is your December, 2025, update that should also help to serve, water users who are in need of those policy guidelines, if they're doing some application work or some other items. And so that's just, hey, look, we've got that carried forward, so. Does anybody have any questions about the update? It's pretty easy to forget how many WP&Ps you have up there. But, that said, it doesn't keep me from offering more. So, I'll bring us immediately, to the next item, which is a form, update. And so there is a deadline extension request form the OE uses, quite regularly, Form 607F. You have a draft version of Form 607F. And this form modification is brought to you a little bit by James Frakes, a little bit by Amanda Barons, who have been, and Christy Brooks as well, have been working in the registration field for our office, and noticed that people who are going to miss their registration response deadlines didn't have a very good avenue, a clear avenue. And so this is a very simple form modification. If you'll look at the highlighted language on number 4 of your draft form, you'll see the highlighted word registration certificates. And this just allows somebody to file for the same deadline extensions that they would maybe normally file for, for things like a response to a letter of defect, because we are actively issuing letters of defect for registration applications. As we go through and process those, we wanted to have an avenue for somebody to extend some of their deadlines. And so that's what's offered here is, and I will remind you that deadline extensions are at the discretion of the OE and not a guarantee. However, we would like to have, especially some of these deadline response to a defect letters, the primary one under 4, that we wanted to include the registration certificate as well. So that'll stand for questions or discussion, but this isn't intended to be listed as an action item on your agenda.
It is or it isn't?
It is intended to be an action item on your agenda, so if the board wants to have any discussion, or maybe not, and wanted to decide to take action, then you do have a public comment and a board propose a potential board action to adopt updated form 607.
Okay, I guess the board or Haley, do you have any questions regarding the draft form 607F?
I don't think I had any specific questions about the form.
Okay. Looks pretty straightforward. With that, I'll take any public comment relative to making comment towards the draft 607F deadline extension request.
If anyone online has a public comment, please raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. Seeing no public comment online.
See no public comment in the audience. All right, with that, we can take action on this. So I guess I'd entertain a motion to adopt it.
Make a motion to adopt draft 607F form.
Thank you, Ken.
I'll second.
Okay, George. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the draft 607F form. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That passes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Thank you, board members. We can now move on to the next item, which is an update, a proposed update, and we're going to look at this online. Here, we're going to share the updated WP&Ps with you. At the last meeting that we had, there was a desire to instead of giving out sections of the WP&Ps that were to be updated, to instead put line strikes on the main master set of WP&Ps. And so we have tried to do that for you here. And so what we have here is this is new proposed WP&P language that if the board finds some language that they think is worthy of its contemplation, you would have to put this out for a 15-day public notice period. Of course, we'd like to get the language in proper working order before you did that, so that once it came back from the notice, absent significant content or comment that would need modification, we wouldn't need to make any additional modifications just based on your consideration here. So you did actually get a chance to look at this at the last board meeting. We talked through it. However, there was an error in the agenda and it did not get listed as an action item. I think we've overcome that here because we have 5.3, which is specific just to this section here. That is set up to let you consider this this modification. Now, if you will, I'll walk you through why we have this and why we think it's needed, and stand for additional questions. And I will also just remind you, did actually approve the first version that we had. So this has some of your edits in there already. But what we noticed as we were going through certain types of registrations that are specific to pre-1973 exempt from filing uses, which we colloquially, oh my gosh, call a 222F. When we can speak, and we ran into a couple of things we thought needed some clarification for folks as we went through the assessment. The first item is that some of these, there's 3 subcategories of the of these types of rights. The first one is surface water direct from source, purpose for stock. Second one is groundwater, purpose for a single domestic that may include lawn and garden. And the third one is groundwater, purpose for stock. And the first clarification we have is on groundwater proposed for single domestic. We wanted to make a clarification that is one home. That's what single domestic means to us. And so this clarification is just it adds what is single domestic, because it's sort of an unusual phrase, and here we just call it one home. Any questions about that particular? All right, I'll keep moving along. And groundwater purpose for single home also includes a lawn and garden component. On the form that went out from the Montana DNRC, who's nice enough to send those forms out on behalf of the board before the board was formed, there was a clarification, and this clarification is seen in the statute under the exceptions to filing, which is that lawn and garden is not to exceed 5 acres in total size. And we wanted to go ahead and replicate that piece of the statute in our WP&Ps to give us appropriate sideboards. And I'll give you a reminder that these registrations, they tie back to the statutory authority under which they were filed. And so this is really offering a level of symmetry between the statutory language and what we want to be issuing for here, with obviously the clear exception that off the reservation, these would normally be statements of claim that went forward to the Montana Water Court, and here they are managed as registrations out of the Office of the Engineer. Okay. I know that's a lot, but I'm just trying to keep us moving forward. Anybody have any questions about the not to exceed 5 acres in total size? Okay. This last section here has to do with topics that came up and that we group discussed. Haley was part of that group discussion as well as some folks from DNRC. And what we came to is that for certain circumstances where we're looking at a registration for a use that is supposed to be originating from before 1973, we didn't feel comfortable using our normal assessment tools and wanted to figure out, well, what should we be doing? Should we do something akin to what the adjudicators do for the water court? And since the statute was set up under those kind of principles off the reservation, we decided that we would go ahead. And it does look like we have one small typo where it says pre-1970, that should be a 3. But when the OE cannot, when we look to see if somebody says, all right, I have a single home and 5 acres of lawn and garden, and when we go to review that particular water right filing, we would go back to an older photograph that approximates as close as we could to 1973 and see like, hey, can we see the green patch out there? Does it look like this had some irrigation associated with it? And then what is the rough acreage of that location? And so if we look back and we find it's all good to go, we would just move that registration along for that particular aspect. If not, what we would propose to do is when we cannot confirm pre-1973 use, at that point, we would issue a letter of defect and require substantial evidence of pre-1973 use that may include, but is not limited to, affidavit from a pre-1973 water user corroborating the use, additional pre-1973 photographic information, and or additional pre-1973 written documentation corroborating the use. So we've got it fairly open and tracking the types of information that would normally be solicited for these in a different setting. And that said, it's this language is set up here so that when we go forward on these, we want to make sure that our approach matches the board's directives, and we think that this is something that should go ahead and be embraced in our water policies and procedures. So that's the extent of this particular section of the WP&Ps. I'll stand for questions or maybe have some additional discussion. It is, as a reminder, what we're hoping to do is get this out for a version that pleases the board out for a 15-day notice of comment, which then would come back to you for adoption. Excuse me.
So refresh my memory as to why we're dealing with state-based registrations on this, especially adjudication stuff. I know.
Certainly.
I don't recall.
Mr. Vice Chairman, board members, so there is a certain category of water uses that in the state of Montana has historically not required any type of filing. And they are pre-1973 uses. That would be, if you scroll down just a little bit here, the other way, up on the, I'm sorry, I have to say that here real quick. And that would be these surface water, direct from source purposes for stock, groundwater purpose for single domestic, groundwater purpose for stock. Now, everywhere else in the state, they've had open filing periods. They also had that here where you could file during House Bill 110 to go ahead and take your exempt from filing use and get a water right for it. Okay, so if that would convert it from like this quiet use that you didn't have to file for, but you couldn't protect, you know, to a normal papered water right. Okay, people on the reservation did have the opportunity to file for things under House Bill 110. We've had a lot of other discussion that exemplifies it. If we get these registration applications and we notice that there is a statement of claim for the same use, and we'll put that into suspended status until it's resolved with the water court. Now, on the reservation, however, there is not a perpetuation of anyone's ability to use water in this exempt fashion. All uses of water on the reservation need to have a water right, with a very narrow exception of cultural and religious uses with the tribes. And so everything else, you know, needs to have a proper water right. So this registration process was set up to include these pre-1973 water uses. And yes, Mr. Vice Chair, it is unusual for an office like ours to be issuing water rights with priority dates that predate the 1973 Montana Water Use Act. That's normally water court territory. However, the compact does include a very specific provision for these to be handled as registrations, and it does specifically call out the priority date for any of the registrations issued for these pre-1973 uses will be the date that the water was first put to use. So, which would always be, and if they're going to get issued, they would always be before 1973. Does that help, Mr. Chairman? Or Mr. Vice Chairman?
But that's part of their statement of claim, isn't it? All that's on their statement of claim.
These are not statements of claim. These are things that were never filed for with the Montana Water Code. So this is no longer a statement of claim. This is a registration. With the complication arising, when our office looks at these, we do look to see if there's a statement of claim out there that you know, same legal, same single home with 2.5 acres, yeah, that kind of thing. Same map, and then we flag that, we'll suspend it and identify it as a problem that needs to be resolved. But these are not claims. We are not looking at claims. These will be pre-73 water uses not filed with Montana Water Court, therefore not closed.
Okay.
And the technical issuance document will be a registration certificate, which I think, you know, I know that we're getting into the weeds on the technical terminology there, but it's important because it's not a claim.
But it has an older priority date, pre-73.
Yep.
Yeah, so there have been a couple, I have reviewed a few of these already, some of those are. Not a bunch, but we're seeing them, so.
And that's where we would decide we needed to have this clarification, just to make sure that we're proceeding down a path that at least you're aware of, if not, we'll endorse it. Haley, do you have anything you want to add?
Not add, I just have a question. So home is a defined term within the ordinance. And I'm just curious if under B, the meaning of that word in B is to also relate to the definition within the ordinance.
Not particularly. Should we just say house? Is house defined? Does it work with the term home from the ordinance?
Well, I mean, the reason why I ask is because are you limiting domestic use to just from a house?
In this case, we were, thinking that home was more inclusive, because some homes aren't necessarily houses.
Right. So meaning that if you're going to do that, I think you need to capitalize H to mirror the definition, which is more inclusive of other types of dwellings beside just a house.
Okay, Ken, do you have any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have a typo. The second line there where it says, but is not limited to. I'm not sure that should be a colon or semicolon, whatever it is. That should probably be a comma. Thank you. And maybe one less space.
Thank you,
That's
good eye.
All right, any other comments, board members? Okay, with that, I guess we've had discussion, entertain public comment on this. Is there any comment from the public in the audience? Seeing none here, Sydney, would you check?
If anyone online has a public comment, please raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. Seeing no public comment online.
Okay, I guess we can move this into action category. So, it's been revised and updated. So is there a motion to accept the update to 21-1074?
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chairman, I'll make a motion to accept the action of post 21-1074 for a update for 15-day notice and comment.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to move this thing along. There was no public comment. With that, let's do a roll call on this one.
Roger Noble,
Yes.
George McLeod,
Yes.
Ken Pitt,
Yes.
Georgia Smith.
All right. Okay, we're on to item 5.4 WP&P 22-101 title change. Ethan, I guess you're shepherding this along?
That's me, Mr. Vice Chair. You want to hear that section for us? You have this as a Word file in our share folder. You might need to pull that up and have it ready and available. So what we have here, Vice Chairman, board members. We'll wait till Sydney gets us back to the WP&Ps.
I'm pulling up another one.
The 651 examples, I think you'd be there. Outstanding, thank you for that. I feel bad, I keep standing up for me to review. Drive safe, Caleb.
Have a happy Christmas or Merry Christmas, Kayla.
Okay, we talked a little bit about this before, and the Chairman Matt actually specifically asked for some additional information. I've tried to provide that here, along with we had some errors in our Microsoft Word documentation, and I think that I'm hoping that I've overcome those here. So the first, item, just for clarification, is that, previously we had under this sub two, just the replacement point of diversion, which is, language that you as a board, heard, put out for 15-day notice and then adopted. And so that section is in fact live. However, when we were at the law conference, the state of Montana had kind of taken this new approach, and they had organized several types of exceptions to a change in use authorization. And that actually, small typo on that one too, that should be exceptions to a permit. Oh, no, it is just changing use authorization. Sorry. All right. Everybody calm down. I'll start. And so, what we have here though is just to get a title change, so we put several things under this, like things we think might be an exception to change in use authorization. One of those would be that replacement POD, and we've gone through that. Now, if you'll scroll down a little bit, we'll get to the, why we want a new heading, which is that now we have a B, another type of change, exception to a change authorization. And in B, what we're doing here is proposing to mimic this form 651 that DNRC has out there, where somebody can file to petition the DNRC to modify a permit or change authorization. So this is us. I want to copy something that the state does that I think has some value. That said, I wanted you to know where this came from, and then also now I'm going to just do my best to try to explain it to you. So in certain circumstances, if you had an element of an existing permit or an existing change that you wanted to modify, almost all the time that you wanted to do that, it would have to go through that full-blown change in use authorization, which is filing the 606 and going through the whole notice thing. It's pretty involved, right? And so, like with that last situation where your point of diversion just got washed out, you need to replace it. We think that there are certain circumstances in which you should be able to do this without having to file full-blown change in use authorization. And I hope that I'm framing that good. And this is one, and it has, underneath it, it has 4 subcategories on what somebody would be able to petition the Office of the Engineer to modify without a change authorization. And so 1 would be to modify or correct information relating to water use. 2 would be to remove a condition. 3 would be to reduce volume of flow rate. And 4 would be to change. I'm sorry, somebody asked. Nope. 4 would be to change interim compliance or construction dates, right? And so this, you know, we'll get into 1 through 4 here in a second, and I'll try to do a better job explaining those. But underneath this is just this is the process that we envision, where the petition modify be authorized at the discretion of the water engineer. This one would be like, we need to have somebody knowledgeable in this, you know, doing the work. I think if we're gonna change anything, we'd maybe stick in there that other language from the ordinance that is, you know, or somebody authorized by the water engineer. I can't designated by the water engineer, but that's for consideration. But the rest of this really tracks what you approved under the process for the pointed diversion replacement, in that all information requested, you know, must be correct and complete. We may, before we can approve the request, and upon receipt, we have 45 days from receiving the date. Stamping to review the request, but may extend the review period 60 days. That's the same language that you approved under the pointed diversion replacement. And then additional information requested may be broad in scope and include the applicant providing historic use information that eliminates concerns of any adverse effects resulting from the petition, or information relating to any past or present litigation objections or complaints relating to the water rights included in the petition. Okay, so we have a little bit of process, we have the framework now. Let's talk about items 1 through 4. And I stand for interruption at any time. At items 1 through 4, Clayton, the chairman, Matt, wanted to have some examples, some specific examples. And so I have sort of hastily put together for you examples under each one of these sections to like take it from this more general statement, and this has typos in it. I know, I just wrote it very fast, so please forgive that, but really it's a temporary document meant for just to get us walking in the right direction. But an example to where somebody might want to modify or correct information relating to water use. I have 2 examples here, and if you will, I'm going to walk us through the examples. That's my intention. Is that meet the board's? Okay, I got some nods. So example 1A, irrigation permit issuance states that the water is pumped from a well into a pond, and then a secondary pump is used at the pond to pump to the place of use. After dealing with years of moss buildup and mosquitoes in the pond, the owner would like to modify the permit to instead pump from underground storage of the same or lesser volume. So this is somebody who just wants to get rid of a pond, right? But their water right cites the pond, and they don't want to, potentially damage the water right. And so solution would be that the water right owner petitions the OE to modify the permit to read the cistern as the place of storage instead of the pond that will be filled. Let's see, there's first typo identified. I probably walked over 3 that will be filled in. So you see why I don't think that needs to go out as a full-blown change authorization. This is something I think we should be able to handle. However, I am going to have to look at that water right in detail in order to determine whether or not, because it sounds good when I write it all like it's all clear here. I would have to open up every water right associated with it, go into it. So these typically hold a fee of like $600, for 651. And we would follow the state's fee structure for that. However, this would be an opportunity for us to get this process handled in a way that we didn't need to go out to notice or do some additional adverse effects analysis. With that, I'll move on to the next example okay. All right, the next example to modify or correct would be a permit issuance map identifies ditch 1 as the location of where a head gate is located and for which an irrigation water right is secondarily sourced from a secondary POD, meaning that there's a head gate off of ditch 1. That's where my map looks. Everything looks all cool. But the permit applicant thought that the name of ditch 1 was ditch 2. And so, and therefore applied throughout the original application, using ditch 2 as the secondary POD. The primary main source for ditches 1 and 2 are the same in this case, okay? This is a problem. Why would this be a problem? I keep getting call because there's not enough water on ditch 2. I'm actually on ditch 1, right? The solution would be that the water owner petitions the OE to correct the permit issuance, replacing the name of ditch 2 with the correct name of ditch 1. Okay, and this would require going back and making sure that historically has always been out of ditch 1 and that this was really a correction, not change, right? If they had originally been on ditch 2 and they're just trying to move on to ditch 1, that would require a change authorization, right? So, am I clear on the difference between the two? And this would be, all right, sorry. Just want to try to do a good job here. With that, I can move on to the next one, which is remove a condition. it said the condition, but it should be a condition, but, here in an example, I have DNRC permit issuance included water measurement condition as the well permit was issued for an artesian flowing well. And then I have the language specific to a water measurement condition that is on a permit, and I'll read it to you. The appropriator shall measure and record the static water level each year in the well during each of the following time periods: March 1st to the 15th, June 15 to the 30th, October 15 to the 31st. Records must include the water pressure or static level in pounds per square inch, or depth in water in feet, the method of measurement, the date and time of measurement, the description of the pressure gauge or measuring point on the casing. The measurement shall be recorded only at a time when the flow has been shut in, all flow from the well stopped for at least 1 hour. Submit the records by November 30th is probably what that's supposed to say, of each year, and or upon request to the Water Resources Regional Office at PO Box 867. Yeah. All right, so in this particular situation, we might have like a water right owner's measurements have been within, a tenth of a foot standard deviation from the measurement from the, their point on the wellhead for over 10 years. Okay. If they don't comply with that measurement requirement on their water right, they could lose their water right because the requirement is, they're stringently set forth on these as a, now, what could the person do? They could, the possible solution, the water right owner could petition the OE to remove the measurement requirement, making the case that there has been no change for a prolonged period. At which point, I would, is it gonna help me to have 3 static level measuring points off of a well at these times of the year? I mean, probably not, and especially if they're not changing. Either way, whether or not that water measurement requirement persists or does not persist, whatever the decision is made by the OE, probably really doesn't need, if it was going to be approved, it wouldn't really need to go out to a larger notice for adverse effects. I might not agree with that if it is specifically targeted in the application issuance for some reason, but for the most part, I think that we should give, I'm proposing that we do what the NRC does and give a water user an opportunity to petition to have the water measurement requirement removed. Third section, reduce the volume of flow rate. In this example, the permit was issued volume of 35 acre feet. Water users never use 35 acre feet, and instead would like the permit to more realistically read 25 acre feet. Solution would be the water right owner may petition the OE to reduce the volume from 35 acre feet to 25 acre feet. And this is limited to reduce volume of flow rate, not increase. This just as clarification, an important clarification. Okay. In that circumstance, where somebody might need that because of, their HOA or some other side agreement that I don't have to deal with, they just need their water right to read this lower volume or flow rate. That's fine. They can petition to do so. Again, though, we would have to look at their water rights in detail. It's not going to just be some rubber stamp process. Item 4 would be change interim compliance or construction date. Example will be a permit was issued with a fixed construction deadline of December 31st, 2025. The owner is behind on construction. The constructed device was intended to reduce the risk that a diversion would adversely affect another application. In this case, they should be able to petition the OE to extend the construction deadline from December 31st to a more appropriate time period, perhaps with alternative conditions to avoid adversely affecting other water users. So if the construction requirement was that, yeah, you can build your head gate on this ditch, but it's gotta have a certain lip on it so that when water in the ditch is below a certain stage, your gate's not taking water. And they're like, well, I haven't done that yet, according to my construction deadline. All right, well, you can't draw water until you do it, but we can extend your deadline instead of you just losing your whole permit. That may not be, that's probably the worst example that I have in this whole case, but it's an example nonetheless. With that, I hope that was useful to explain the need for Form 651F. And the ask here today is not to approve any forms. You don't have a form ahead of you, but if you like the idea of eventually getting a Form 651F, the phase 1 would be to send this language in your WP&Ps out to public notice for a 15-day period, and then and go from there, and then you look at it again and add another agenda where you would have this as proposed adoption. If you chose to send this out, I'll include a form at that time.
Has legal seen this yet?
Haley, have you seen this yet?
Well, I posed a few questions the last time this came up that doesn't look like they've been answered with this draft. For example, the state procedure for this specifically references Montana Code annotated 852314, which does have a process where the department, but here the OE would issue a preliminary determination. And I don't see that in this process here, so I just don't think that this is fully fleshed out at this time. I also, I don't know if it was passed out, and so I apologize. But the examples for, 1 through 4, I would like to see those. I couldn't really hear the first one. I mean, you're moving through those pretty quick. So, sorry I didn't catch you on 1. But I guess I'm hesitant when it comes to a change to a means of diversion. That would just be like a correction where that could potentially have an effect on volume and flow rate. So I think I'm just a little bit concerned about those items. And then I think my final question that was posed in the last, excuse me, the last meeting was what purpose this would serve. For example, like what are the examples that you are hearing about and seeing in real time that justify the need for this provision right now, when this is something that could be vetted by the permit and change work group?
Sure. So I would prefer not to do a preliminary determination on these. I think if there needs to be an excessive, determination document that's kind of outside the scope of what I think these types of modifications should be limited to. In terms of a correction that would potentially modify volume and flow rate. If in looking at the petition, there's any concern that volume or flow rate would potentially be modified, and that it's not a pure correction, then I would push this to a regular 606 F process. So I guess that's my thoughts. And then, we have had people, coming into the office primarily trying to figure out what to do with their water measurement requirements and asking if there was a way, because they had tried in the past to file 651 with DNRC, who couldn't change anything.
Yeah, so I guess my follow-up to that question, or to that then, is like, what is the rationale for wanting to change water measurement? Is it because it's a burden alone, or are there actual substantive reasons why these water right holders want the water measurement taken off? I'm thinking down the line with enforcement for
Yeah,
this office.
that's a valid question. And I will say that, that ill-effectuated water measurement requirements are a burden to both our office and the water right holder. And, in my opinion, like the example that I gave, there's not much tangible administrative value to 3 static water level measurements. So, yeah, burden is the emphasis.
Board has any other comments on this?
Nope.
Well, yes, I can kind of understand the need for some of this. The reduced volume, I mean, they're gonna reduce the volume all the better to make it more realistic. That in turn might free up some legally spoken for water, so. And I know from experience that some of those water measuring conditions were just a rubber stamp type thing on when DNRC issued permits. I think we'd have to look at that, like on here, it says making the case that there has been no change for a long period. Something like that would have to be substantiated, just before you withdrew it, but,
Well, I understand the rationale, you presented it well. I guess I would just feel more comfortable if we make sure Haley has a full opportunity to review.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Maybe you could just bolster this up and give, if Dustin has experience with a couple examples, bring those site-specific examples in, and I think you could go ahead and get the form together for at least review. That would be my suggestion. But, just maybe we can respond to Haley's, questions regarding a little more, detail on a couple of those items.
I think in particular, so that this can be, helpful moving forward, right? I mean, from what I heard is that there's a need to want to bring this over from, or similarly, or from what the DNRC does, in these situations. And I think if that is the intent, then a hard look at that process does need to be taken. There's not an option to not do a preliminary determination under this procedure on the state level. And so I want to understand the rationale for not doing that, aside from it's just more work on our plate.
Well, that'd probably make the decision a little more legally defensible also, so, then it would withstand any legal challenge, so it'd probably be, but so maybe if you could do a little deeper dive on that and bring it back one more time, hopefully.
I don't know if there's a much deeper dive. I mean, if we're gonna do a preliminary determination and a notice, they can just file a 606 up. I I mean, that, to me, that there's not a whole lot of difference at that point, right?
Well, does the state require a PD on these 607s? I don't know, I'm asking.
So that's what I brought up. This process for Form 651 references the statutory provision 852314. If you look up that provision, it does describe a preliminary determination to grant process. There is an option to waive public notice, but the department still does need to produce some sort of preliminary determination on that.
What goes into the preliminary determination? Questions for Haley.
Well, they have review criteria under that. I mean, the office has issued a preliminary determination before. It's the recommended decision for the flathead system compact water. Obviously a little bit different review criteria, but essentially you're looking at what the effects of it would be. But the statutory authority here does specify certain review criteria for these types of situations. So they are specific to these more limited situations.
Any other board thoughts on this situation?
Yeah, I guess I just, I understand, I've heard both sides of this. I just really want, because we're still relatively new, I just feel more comfortable if everything's gone through a legal review and we're dotting i's and crossing t's and just double checking so nothing comes back to bite us later. I understand it's a burden. I just want to make sure we don't create another burden down the road that I can't anticipate. And if it means just waiting a couple of weeks to get a little more review, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
I would agree with you.
Okay. Ken, any other final thoughts on this? Just not.
Oh, that was a no.
Oh. All right, I think the concept's good, Ethan. I like what you're doing, but it sounds like the board would like some further information, relative to the PD process. And, I can see where you're coming from, that if a PD is needed and we have to go, I guess it's not, a PD is not quite, or this type of thing is not quite as onerous as doing one for a change application. I would hope not. But, anyway, if you could look at, I'd like to see you bring this back one more time.
Well, just, so our PD process for the other things has generally involved Haley writing some procedures. So, and I think she's got an idea of what she'd like to see. Can we have her draft up, what she thinks needs to happen with the PD?
Sure, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess I'm confused on that. No, I'm not going to draft up a PD because I'm not going to write for staff. In case something like that comes before the board. I can try and find a template that DNRC has or an example from DNRC on maybe one of these particular PDs.
And I think that's what we're looking for. We don't, and I was even thinking maybe if we looked at what the PD language was for the other compact water or whatever it is. So, just something so that we could get a feel for the amount of work that's involved. So I guess with that, would the board just like to table this pending further information at this time, or?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Haley again.
Okay. I don't think we need a motion for that, so. So yeah, perhaps if you could give us a little more information relative to the PD so that we could then determine how significant much work that is, that would help us decide if we want to go down this path or not. But I do see the need or the benefit of having something like this to streamline the process. It's just a matter of, like Georgia says, getting it right. So. All right, with that, we've been at it for about 2 hours. You guys want to take a quick 10-minute break?
Like you read my mind.
Resume.
It's time for a cupcake.
All right, welcome back to the meeting after a quick break. We're ready to proceed with board business, item number 6. Board membership updates. I guess we haven't heard. I guess the CSKP is still trying to appoint someone for Clayton's position, as far as I know. Do you have more of an update on that than?
There was still an ad in the Charcusta, this last Charcusta.
So,
And it did say, it didn't say what position, but I figured it wasn't yours because yours is appointed. It put it at 175 a meeting. I don't know if that was a typo or.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's-
It's that's the old one. He's a tough act to
Yeah.
follow
Yeah.
too.
And that's what made me think, well, is this Clayton's or,
Yeah.
but it'd have to be.
Yeah, so it says chair, vice chair, and finance director. The vice chair being me, I guess the update there is the process is the governor's office asks the 4 counties that are on the reservation to provide nominations. And then the governor's office evaluates those and makes a selection. So I may be here and I may not be.
When is that? What period of time?
It's the end of the year.
Oh,
Should know it'll be January sometime,
Oh, end of this year.
end of this year.
I thought you were talking next year. I'm sorry for misunderstanding.
No, this year.
Oh, wow.
So, and the finance director, I don't know, what was that one about?
I think it's for other topics below.
That's just a list of everybody
Oh,
who's gonna
okay.
handle this, but,
Then, just to continue on that vein then. 6.1 is updates, discussion of advertisement to solicit members. I guess Georgia will be departing, I'm sorry to say,
Mhm.
in February.
Or sooner. Did Pela say that recommendation? Was that to apply now or in the future?
I didn't understand.
I took that to be in the future.
In the future.
Sure,
That's what I, yeah.
But the Georgia's position is selected by the other 4 members of the board, and I don't know who will provide those nominations. I don't know if the board does that or if it's the leftovers. Last time, it was the candidates that were basically left over from the selection of the other 4 board members, I think, is what happened. And then those 4 board members had reviewed those resumes and made a selection based on that. So I don't know if somebody sends in a recommendation to the governor's office and to the tribal council for the 5th board member. I don't really know how that happens, so I'd have to go in. It's not really clear in the compact, is it?
yeah, so we talked about this a little bit last time and, I remember the discussion being like, hey, maybe you guys should just do your own solicitation and put out, your feelers to see who would like to be your fifth voting board member. Similar to the advertisement that's in the Chartreuse, but this would be different because it would direct people to your office and their applications here, with included reference criteria on, you know, the minimums that are needed for somebody to be a board member, right? Which is in the compact.
Yeah, that's pretty well spelled
Yeah.
out.
I'm just saying like that'd be, I'm just throwing this out there instead of having the, because if you're really gonna ultimately make a decision, why don't you just go ahead and be the front line to receive the information and do the outreach out of, you know, in-house.
That's what I recall too. It seems like we had this discussion before, and so the state puts up two names, the tribes put up two names for 4 of the positions, but then I think they left it open for the board to come up with the 5th.
Yeah.
So,
It only really gets complicated if you guys can't make a decision, and then there is some additional detail set forth, but let's not educate ourselves on that until you can't make a decision.
Yeah.
Right?
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can add a little bit more context from the last board meeting. So Ethan's right. It was essentially the board's kind of consensus that put forward some names, obviously with the understanding that they would have to meet the criteria set out in the compact. But then also there was a possibility of asking the state and the tribes to put forward a recommendation, and then use their recommendations as just options to interview, as well. So that was the last conversation.
So do we want to develop a formal advertisement then to solicit a 5th board member? I would bet that, I don't know about the tribe, you can probably speak better to that than I can, but I would think that there may be other candidates that come from the governor's office too, that the 5th board member could be selected from. So.
I'm just thinking out loud, if there's gonna be a solicitation and advertisement created by you, then a way to incorporate the others would be to just send that solicitation to the governor's office and to the tribal council and say, hey, if you have somebody else, you know, that you think might be interested, tell them to work through this channel so that the information that you get will be consistently received through kind of your, you know, your lens of what you want the advertisement, the announcement, the solicitation to look like. And that'll make a certain uniformity to the process that I think will be an advantage for your decision-making process.
Okay. Haley, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a formal advertisement would be fine. I don't think it needs to be anything, extensive. But directing it to, Pela, and then, if George and or Clayton wants to direct it to a tribal representative, maybe Melissa, to, basically solicit a name, that the rest of the board members can consider. I think would be good. I think just in the advertisement, make sure you pick a point person, for who materials and or communications would be received by.
is this something Sophie could put together for us? Or is that?
I would assume that you're gonna probably go through our email system. I mean, I don't know how you're gonna do it, but like, at some point you need to go through our email system. So either a board member being designated to receive everything, or you can run it through, Amanda through the contact email, the way that you would, and information from an appeal or something. I'm just like looking for options for you, that way, you would have somebody else to help administer it, the way that she does, for some of your appeal information. I do think though, if you're gonna do a solicitation, you should at least have a set of questions or something, to get a little bit of feedback, and it doesn't, that way it would help you winnow things, figure out what you wanna know about, that would help you winnow things down to, people that you might wanna interview.
Well, I guess I was thinking it'd be simpler than that. For instance, I know in Flathead County, when they have board openings, they just have a general, in the public notices section of the newspaper, they have just a general advertisement. It says, we have these openings on these boards. Please submit a letter of interest with your resume for consideration. Yeah, so I almost think it could be something like that, but just with a paragraph in front that says, explains about the Flathead Reservation Order Management Board, what it does, that it needs a 5th member, and then just let it go with that.
So you want a resume then?
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, what's what we had last time to review, and then we had a series of questions at that board meeting that we reviewed and asked everybody the same questions and evaluated their responses during the interviews and then selected. So, and that I would imagine that's what we do again.
And that's something that has to happen fairly soon.
Yeah, it does.
So, can I weigh in here?
Yeah,
I'm not real comfortable cutting out tribal council, the governor's office. Not that I think I want them really deeply involved, because I don't think we need that, but I think at least an effort should be, should we find out how deeply do they want to be involved? And maybe not. Maybe they say, just handle it. But I think my instinct is that we touch base with them.
Well, just to clarify, Ken, I wasn't thinking that you cut them out. I was thinking that if they had people that they wanted to route your way, that you made sure that they had the solicitation in hand so that they could direct people to the solicitation.
And I wasn't even thinking of going that far. I just wanted to make sure they understood what we were doing and they were privy to where we're going.
Yeah, I know, when I checked in about the board member terms with Pela a little bit ago, the state is very knowledgeable of what's going on, and that the board's going to be undertaking some sort of solicitation process within these next 2 months.
But does that mean the governor's office is informed when you say the state? Or the tribal?
I don't speak with Kristen Juris, the lieutenant governor, so I'm not quite sure, but I mean, that's something that we can find out.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking is we find out.
okay.
Well, she's obviously aware because we just received that she made a suggestion about the term. Right? I'm just, you guys heard that, right?
Yeah.
That Pela conveyed that Lieutenant Governor suggested that we switch the term from February into February, is that right?
Yeah, well, from anniversary date to
Right.
the calendar date.
Which, and on one hand, I get that, on the other hand, I believe that the reason that it's like that for you is that they had to have the other 4 board members
Yeah,
standing. So for me, I have a little hard time figuring out the math on that, because that would mean then that your outgoing board members are gonna, because 2 of your outgoing board members would be choosing the 5th person every time, or 2 of your brand new board members would be choosing the 5th person. See what I'm saying?
I know.
Okay, yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
but I don't, so in a way, staging is kind of nice, but I also get where she's coming from.
Yeah, I think she was trying to streamline it, but I think your point has a lot of merit to it, so. I guess we can think about that more, but yeah, that was. And, and they did that initially. Cause Ken's first appointment was for 2 years and Teresa's appointment was for 2 years. So they staggered it, so there'd be 2 years of overlap between board members as appointments came due. So that's sort of the same situation, there's just another month of overlap, so that fifth member can be selected by a full quorum. Otherwise, you might only have 2 board members.
Right.
So.
So that's.
So, yeah, that's a good valid point. Well, all right, so who's gonna write the RFP or the loan request for interest?
If you're looking at me, it'll be like written in January sometime, not. In my announcements later in this, I'm walking out of here until the first of the year. After this meeting, so, and I will participate in the meeting on Thursday though. But,
Sydney, can you help us with that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Maybe you could circulate something, just draft up something real quick. Cause we gotta get it out and advertised. Do you wanna, well, you don't wanna review it.
I think she should write it personally. I mean, like, I think your direction is totally off from where I'm at. She's making a gap.
Send me a draft. Do you want a draft?
Sure.
Okay,
I can do that.
George and I will spearhead that,
And should I get a hold of one of the council members? and
Yeah.
Run this by them?
if you would.
Yeah, I'll give Carol a call.
Okay.
She's our local board and council person.
Perfect. I can always talk to Kristen's up too, so. All right, does that answer that part of that? 6.1, are we there? I would say. All right, on to 6.2, board committee compensation for November 2025.
That would be found in your packet and it's your green sheet. And please review carefully, there's been several changes. I believe I've got consensus on both of them.
Yeah,
I was good.
I'm good. Ken, have you seen the board compensation committee?
Yes,
You're good with it?
yes.
Okay. Georgia?
Mhm.
All right, I'll take a motion then to approve it.
So, Mr. Vice Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve a board committee compensation for November 2025.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Had discussion, public comment, and our public in the audience is now vacated. Sydney, is there anybody?
If anyone online has a public comment, please raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. Saying no public comment online.
Public comment, all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ken?
Yes,
Thank you. All right, on to board compensation for November 2025. It's pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
Any discussion? If not, I'd take a motion.
Want to do public comment on that or not?
Yeah, thanks. There's no public in the audience, any public in the online?
If anyone online has a public comment, please raise your hand and I will allow you to speak.
Yeah.
Saying no public comment.
Okay, I'll take a motion now.
I moved to approve board compensation for November 2025.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve board compensation for November 2025. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Resolution number 1, edit to increase expenditure amount for finance. Haley, I believe this is yours, is it? Is it not?
I brought forward the edit to the resolution, but I'm gonna let Rhonda, if that's okay, if you want to speak to the reason behind it?
Yeah, so in the original, we had a limit of $5,000 before it required 2 signatures. And we found that we commonly go above the $5,000 threshold. And then talking with Redtail, because of the cost of goods and services, there's a lot of people that have businesses and entities that had to raise that threshold. And so we're kind of in that industry standard now. And we're trying to solve that problem too of having, well, we've been fortunate to have Clayton come in and do that second signature when we need to. And now with him not being in that position, that threshold would be going from $5,000 to $10,000 for expenditures, not requiring a second signature. So it really won't change what we're doing other than it's just a higher threshold limit. Allow for us to process bills a little bit faster.
So from what I can tell, really the only change on the resolution was just what's in yellow, the highlighted number went from 5,000 to 10,000, none of the language changed.
None of the language changed. That was the only change. And that would just be the trigger point for 2 signatures would now be 10,000 instead of 5,000.
Any discussion, any concerns? Ken, any comment?
Yeah, remind me, who's the authorized signatories as of now?
So it's myself, Roger, and Clayton.
Okay.
I do remember that we went through considerable work in drafting this up the first time, so there was a lot of effort already put into this. So with that, I guess, any other discussion? George, any comments?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I have a question, if you would.
Okay.
What is the, on the last page, there's this section, and I'm sorry, I'm just not reading this fast. There's this section under requisition forms, and
Okay, see. What are 5,000?
what is the requisition form?
So for large purchases, a requisition form, I believe, we have those. We haven't really been utilizing them very well.
Okay, it's not something you have to fill out for
It's
buying something, right?
It's something that you, if you needed something, you fill it out and submit it to me for me to purchase it.
All right, sorry,
Pre-approval.
Pre-approval, basically, yeah. A documented paper trail, so it's just not me going out and buying 2 computers.
yeah, all right, I got you, dude, and that doesn't need to be up also to 10,000?
I don't think that needs to change.
Sorry to interrupt, I'll shut up now.
No, good questions.
Trying to make sure you didn't need that, also.
Yeah, thank you. Good input. So, all right, with that, we'll take public comment. None from the audience.
If anyone online has a public comment, please raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. Saying no public comment.
Okay, there's no public comment on that. I'll take a motion to approve resolution number 1 as revised.
I move that we approve resolution number 1 as revised.
Thank you. I'll second it. Thank you. All right, we have some motion and seconded to approve resolution number 1 as revised. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, Ken, and that's a done deal. With that, we move on to Office of Water Engineer updates, 7.1 staffing.
All right, So staff will be a little bit thin, during the holidays, of course, and, I'm one of the ones that will be thin. I'll be taking a lot of time off till next year. In the interim, Dustin's gonna, help out by, trying to field issues and do his best to, keep me informed of important items. However, he's not assigned to deal with any time or anything. I did, talk to, Rhonda, and so I'm gonna right now here advise staff to, copy, me on their next timesheets, but to direct them directly to finance. And so the timesheets that'll be due for approval, including my own, which I'll send to you as well, as whoever else I might need to, you can route it if needed. All need to go to Rhonda so that she can approve things on the 30th, by the 30th, or whatever date she chooses to. But please do maintain the timeliness of the submissions, and share that with, I think Amanda's on, with Christie and James, and help everybody, help Rhonda, to cover for this. So thank you for doing that, and thank you, Dustin, for helping to track things, and hopefully, I guess if they have coverage or weather issues, should they direct questions to you or to Clayton?
I think, probably direct them to me. It sounds like Clayton's kind of under the weather.
Okay,
So yeah.
Mhm.
right? Can, I'm gonna share your cell phone with staff, not here,
Yeah,
but, so that they, well, I'll actually just send probably group text, but that doesn't mean that you guys need to include me on all following texts, but mostly just to get you coordinated with Roger for the time being, so that if you have weather concerns or absentees or, office coverage issues, and you have to make some maneuvers just out of base need, just keep in the loop, and, I may be a little out of pocket.
Well, I better catch you while you're here. I have just a general knowledge question, I guess. George and I were chatting earlier, and the tribes get out a little bit earlier on, is it Christmas Eve or the day before?
Christmas,
Um,
Christmas Eve day.
how about you guys? What is the plan for staff Christmas week?
There was some discussion about it earlier.
Well, we were hoping to have the office closed at least half day. We weren't anticipating like running like a holiday period. So, you have to tell them that.
so you're not claiming that time then as work time, administrative time?
That was gonna work, just not here. Personally, I can't speak to, I think Christie and I were the only ones that were working that day, so it would be me and whatever Christie did.
I kind of like the tribes method that, early out at 2:30 or something. That seems appropriate. So,
That's your call, but I just thought we better ask you before.
I'm telling you, nobody's gonna be here on Christmas Eve. I mean,
Yeah.
I am super comfortable with like just remote work for the entire day.
Sure.
You're
I am
asking me what
too.
my call is, I would say, let staff do remote work on Christmas Eve with the expectation that some work gets done, of course.
all right.
That's my two cents. And, I've not ever seen anybody come into a water right office on Christmas Eve.
I don't think so. I just thought we better ask you while you're here.
All right,
Get that question.
When will you be back?
sometime after the second.
You don't have a more specific date than that.
No,
All right.
probably the third. I, just got some travel.
Is the office open Friday after Christmas?
At present, it's set to be staffed. You know, I mean, all the coverage, so the deal is, the office can't be open without two people here. Right? And so if we don't have two people, then we don't have two people. But, there's only two people stacked to work on, let me just open the calendar here real quick. I'll tell you exactly who's scheduled to work day after Christmas. Let's see. Present, we don't have anybody set to work the day after Christmas. Wait, oh, I'm looking wrong. I think that, like, right now, it says the office doesn't have coverage on the 26th.
The crux of it is I'm the only one that doesn't have enough leave saved up to take holiday vacation around Christmas.
So I don't know what to do on the 26th. Is anybody planning on working on the 26th? Are you working the 26th?
I'm in
You've got it.
Idaho.
Yeah, you've already signed out. Frakes is out, I'm out.
I'm sure like there's childcare issues too, and schools aren't gonna be open around the holidays.
Yeah,
So that makes it really difficult for anybody to keep the office open on Fridays.
It's true.
Because of the holidays. I think they're on winter break, aren't they, or getting close to going on winter break?
Getting
That's
close.
next week.
Next week.
Are you in or out on the 26th?
I wasn't planning on being in at all, but if I need to be,
And you're in or out on the 26th?
I was gonna work the 26th, but I was gonna work from home because nobody, someone else to work with.
Were you working remotely or off?
off, tried to work Monday through Thursday.
Oh.
So Friday would normally be my day off.
Yeah. Well, this is what it is. All right. Guess that takes us down to the next board meeting. We do have as a reminder, a budget committee meeting on the 18th, which is a remote, Teams meeting. But
I am gonna attend the 18th meeting, just, I did commit to that, so.
I'd like to attend the meeting from this office if it doesn't interrupt staff.
It's fine with me, I'm not gonna be attending the
Okay.
Thursday?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's fine. City's not here, I'll be up front.
Okay.
okay, next board meeting, I guess I was gonna get to my calendar.
It's looking at 19.
January 2026, wow.
Ooh. I like even numbered years, just putting that out there, so.
What was your favorite?
I'm pretty open.
I know which one was not my favorite one.
Yes,
So I'm starting to teach again. I'll be teaching on Monday and Wednesday. Morning and early afternoon.
so I'm hearing that Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays are better for you.
Yes.
Okay,
I'm pretty open for the month for the big thumbs up.
I'm pretty open too. I think our big issue is gonna be the budget. Getting that final budget ready for the 2027 biennium. So we'll probably wanna have a budget committee meeting sometime early. Yeah,
So I'll be teaching too. The only days I'm not teaching, or the only day I'm not teaching is Wednesday.
Wednesday.
I teach till late afternoon on Monday and I teach till 2:20 on Thursdays. It's a winter schedule is killer. I may be remoting in.
We do need to have a budget meeting that first week. What would be
A Wednesday would be good.
Wednesday?
Yeah,
Okay, so
any
that
Wednesday.
would be the 7th then.
Mhm.
So maybe we'll plan on a budget committee meeting then.
Okay.
What time?
I don't know, I'll have to look at that. The Wednesday, 22. What about, are there any mornings or afternoons that you're only gonna have really one or two more meetings?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So I teach pretty much all day on Monday. And I teach till 10 on Tuesday, so I could have Tuesday afternoons. Thursdays are full, morning to afternoon, and then I have Wednesdays open, but it sounds like that's a conflict with Ken's teaching schedule.
So it sounds like Tuesday afternoon will work for you and it works for Ken.
Yeah, that would be a good option, huh?
George and I.
Okay.
So, maybe not, so do we wanna shoot for the 13th or? That'd be a good day. Does that sound all right?
Sounds good as
Right
me.
now?
Do we have a time for the budget meeting on the 7th?
Yeah,
No, I mean. January 13th.
On the 13th, this room is, taken by the legal and physical availability subgroup.
the whole day.
Just the I mean, you were planning an afternoon meeting, right? Just the afternoon.
Okay.
I assume if they were in the morning, it would.
Sure.
If that's the only time you guys can meet, I can note that meeting if I have to. Rather not.
Oh, you're just meeting with your group, subgroup? Yeah, you can move that. You can go upstairs.
I could go upstairs.
Yeah, so let's just stick with the 13th.
So like 1 to 4.
1 to 4, 1 to 5, whatever.
Okay, and then on the 7th?
What time would you guys like to meet on?
But I mean, like usually Aaron attends your board meeting. Alright, maybe you just end up having to move it.
What's that?
You might just have to move that.
Oh.
So that, because I mean, she normally would attend the board meeting. So if she's got the legal and physical availability. And there's not that many people that attend your meetings, you should. Try to keep one that shows up.
George, is there a time that works for you best on the 7th?
I'd rather knock it out in the morning, then I'm available for students in the afternoon, so. 10 o'clock,
You can even go to 9 o'clock if you want.
whatever.
10's great.
Is
It
that
gives me time to prep for you guys.
okay,
But I need to get back Kalispell.
Okay.
is that one we could do remotely? Or no?
Let's go from 9 to 11.
Okay.
Okay, we got something on the agenda. I guess I overlooked the water right report, sorry guys, so I'll have to back up to that.
Sydney, can you take it?
Excellent.
Thanks.
Yeah, the very first one is just the water rights application report. As you can kind of see, it's slowed down significantly since the start of the year. Let's see,
Yeah,
it's not up to date for halfway through December, just because we're doing it once a month. And so in January, we'll see what the totals are for December. We have gotten a couple new domestic development allowances. And, extensions have also significantly slowed down. This next one is the days of the week comparing incoming traffic. As per usual, Friday is the slowest day. We've got almost a year of data now, and Fridays have about half the walk-ins and half the calls than any other day of the week. But the highest still remains for calls on Monday and for walk-ins on Tuesday. The next one is the monthly comparison. September was still our highest. November is one of the lowest for walk-ins that we've had. And the lowest for phone calls throughout the month.
Holiday effect.
all right, always good to look at that. Thank you, Sydney. Okay, with that, I guess, is there any other business? Or do everyone have a happy holiday?
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everybody.
All right, I take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, aye, aye.